A little over a year ago, we purchased this BYD Yuan Plus to use as the official Wheelsboy company vehicle, and in today's video, I'm going to tell you about our ownership experience thus far.
Welcome to Wheelsboy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
I already made a video where I went into more detail as to why we chose the Yuan Plus, a link to which should be appearing above my head right about now. Bet you I nailed the timing on that, didn't I? Anyways, the short version is we were looking for a camera car, something to help us capture the on-road footage that we use in our reviews, and after a whole lot of back and forth within the team, we went with the Yuan Plus. Spoiler alert, we've been happy with our decision ever since. Spoiler alert part 2, that doesn't mean that this is a perfect vehicle. Let's start with initial quality. When we picked this car up, we gave it a pretty thorough inspection, and the only issue we could find was a slightly squeaky brake pedal, an issue that also happened to resolve itself over the course of the first 1,000 kilometers or so of driving. Now that we've come to the side of the vehicle, let's talk about the most dramatic incident we've had since purchasing the Yuan Plus, and that is also the only accident we've had so far. You see, one of the members of the team was driving the car out of their apartment complex when a three-wheeler that was driving next to them lost control and veered into the side of the car. As a result, we had to replace the right rear passenger door because the handlebars of the three-wheeler punched a hole in it. I'm very happy to say that the pilot of that three-wheeler was perfectly fine. Interestingly, however, the three-wheeler was also fine and relatively undamaged. I found that a little strange considering the fact that it ran into the side of a car, so after swapping the doors, I took the opportunity to measure the thickness of the metal, and it came out to about 0.76 millimeters. As far as I can tell, that's pretty much industry average, but maybe somebody with greater knowledge than I can educate us in the comments section below. Either way, the $530 cost of swapping that door was covered by insurance. Before we jump inside, let's talk about mods. My initial plan, of course, was twin turbos, a more aggressive camshaft, and equal length headers. Then I remembered that this is an electric SUV, so instead, I installed the frunk. This was actually pretty easy to get in there, but if I'm being honest, I don't think we've used it even once. But the most important modification by far is right here in this bag. This is the old Build Your Dreams logo, which we have gotten rid of in favor of a simple and beautiful BYD. We have also installed the Australian market model name Atto 3, just for fun. The interior of the BYD Yuan Plus is controversial, shall we say. Some people find it downright ugly. I, on the other hand, find it to be a cool combination of interesting design elements such as the weird door handles and the muscle fiber dashboard, and practical design, such as the number of physical buttons throughout the interior. I'm especially a fan of the physical controls for the air vents. Ooh, listen to that. Nice. There are, however, a few things that have come to bother me over the course of the last year. Most of them are very small. Take, for example, the fact that the red on this air vent that I love so much, the red on this stitching, and the red on this seat piping aren't the exact same shade of red. I understand that it's difficult to achieve the exact same shade of any color across different materials, however, it still bothers me. Another relatively minor annoyance is this digital instrument cluster here. It's perfectly passable for getting your basic driving information, like your current speed and your range and whatnot, but it does feel very, very small, especially because of the big black border around the edges. It felt even smaller after I'd driven the BYD Yuan Up, which is a smaller, more affordable BYD that has a noticeably larger and higher quality instrument cluster. The 12.8-inch center screen has aged much better, mostly because they still use this screen and UI in newer BYD models. We utilize this screen basically how you expect. We play videos on it while charging the car, we use the GPS and all of that. There are, however, some features that we really have not used in the last year. Take, for example, the fact that you can spin the screen. This is really nifty when you buy the car, but then you realize, wow, I'm never really going to use that. Speaking of never using, this is the microphone for the karaoke that, I'll be honest, we never use. Undoubtedly, the greatest weakness for this center screen, however, is the display for the backup camera. This is, without a doubt, one of the worst backup cameras I've ever seen in a modern vehicle. Not only is the image quality low, but there's also occasionally some disturbances on the screens or distortions, like it's some sort of 1980s CCTV footage. Of course, the ultimate in useless features has to be the door-mounted guitar strings. We never did start a Wheelsboy band.
I'm not exactly a technophile, but I was quickly won over by the BYD app. It's proven very useful as it allows multiple members of our team to access the car without the physical key. It also provides basic functions like the ability to lock and unlock the car or turn on the AC remotely.
My favorite feature, however, is the ability to input a GPS destination into your phone here via the app, of course, and then send it directly to the center screen so you can just immediately start navigating there. This is really useful in a world in which we often get addresses for where we're going via our phone, so you can just copy paste it straight into the app and send it straight to the screen instead of having to input it yourself. Unfortunately, it seems as though this feature is only available on the domestic Chinese language version of the app and not the global one. The BYD Yuan Plus was one of the first Chinese vehicles I'd ever driven where the ride, the handling, the overall driving experience felt high quality, felt very solid, and after 20,000 kilometers, I still feel that way. This thing is good, and not just compared to other Chinese EVs. I would say it stacks up well against EVs from really any brand in this segment. And that's considering the fact that it comes with some pretty terrible stock tires. I understand this is an EV, so low rolling resistance is the priority, but my God, these things have the same level of grip as one of those claw machines where you try to pick up the stuffed animal. The 150 kilowatt front-mounted electric motor will roast the tires on command. And honestly, I cannot wait to change these out for something a bit higher quality at the earliest opportunity. We still have another 20,000 kilometers or 12 months until our next scheduled maintenance, but I think I'm going to be heading to the dealership a bit before then because this steering seems to have developed a bit of a catch, a friction point when returning to center from either the left or the right. It's not that noticeable, but might be a point of concern. So I will be headed to the dealership pretty soon. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it before we made this video. However, I will update our followers on social media as to what the conclusion is, so be sure to check out the links in the description below. Since we plan on driving this car to nearby cities for shoots, we needed the larger battery pack model. That's the 60 kilowatt hour pack with a claimed NEDC range of 480 kilometers. Since we bought this car, our average energy consumption, according to the onboard computer, is 13.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers or 150 mpge.
A majority of this car's life has been spent on city streets at low speeds, but we've also taken it on multiple highway road trips, including when we used it as a camera car for our BYD Qin range test, where it covered 1,800 kilometers. We did an informal highway range test on a very hot day in August of last year, where it managed a range of 372 kilometers or 232 miles, with 4% battery remaining.
Its range has since proven more than sufficient for our users, though it must be noted that China has one of the most developed electric vehicle charging infrastructures in the world, so charging was rarely an issue, including when we're on those long road trips and using public chargers. On most nights, however, this thing is plugged into a 7 kilowatt home charger. It's on those long highway road trips that you really get to know this car, including some of its foibles. Take, for example, the fact that the fastest charging USB ports in this car seem to be the ones in the back row, not the two up front. There's also the fact that the center screen, while it is of good size and does have a decent UI and good speeds, does like to drop its 4G data connection. Not all the time, but enough that you start to notice it. The biggest annoyance, however, has to be the cruise control. One of the reasons we chose this trim level of the Yuan Plus is because we didn't really see the value in getting the more expensive trim level that had the radar-guided cruise control, the more advanced ADAS system. That's because at the time, at least, BYD's ADAS was not exactly class-leading. We figured that this version with standard cruise control would do just fine. What we didn't expect is that the standard cruise control would also be kind of terrible. The way it's supposed to work is that I hit this button to turn it on, then I hit this button to set a speed, right? Wrong. In fact, you hit this button and then the car proceeds to continue to accelerate upwards for 2, 3, or maybe 4 kilometers per hour. Or maybe it'll go down by 2 or 3 kilometers per hour. Either way, you're not going to be traveling at the speed that you thought you would be. And when you want to adjust the speed using this button over here, it doesn't adjust by a set speed of 1 kilometer per hour, 5 kilometers per hour. It actually does it by something like 1.5 kilometers per hour as far as I can tell. It's inconsistent and makes it difficult for you to set a speed that allows you to smoothly keep up with traffic.
I want to note the fact that the BYD Qin L that we used in the aforementioned range test also had standard cruise control and did not have this issue. So it seems like BYD has improved it on their newer models. All I can say is, thank God. It's also important to note, and somewhat ironic in fact, that this thing is otherwise a pretty good highway cruiser. NVH is well controlled, the seats are quite supportive, even though this model doesn't have adjustable lumbar support, and the ride is very compliant. Before we conclude, let's take things back to the beginning of the video, where I said we bought this car to use as a camera vehicle, something to capture on-road footage for our videos. How did it perform in that respect? I think I'll just let the footage speak for itself.
So there you have it, my impressions of BYD Yuan Plus ownership after over a year and 20,000 kilometers behind the wheel. I definitely have my complaints about this car, but I suppose the big question is, if I could go back in time and buy a different Chinese electric SUV, would I do it? The answer is nope. I am very happy with this little green jelly bean.